Most of your problems only exist in your head. Buddhist wisdom. Let me ask you to do something. Think back to a year ago. Try to remember the things that worried you most. The fears that kept you awake. The conversations you dreaded. The outcomes you were certain would be terrible. How many of them actually happened? Take your time with this question. Really look. Because if you examine your own life honestly, you will likely discover something that most people never stop to notice. The vast majority of what you feared never came to pass. The catastrophe you imagined remained imagination. The disaster you rehearsed 100 times in your head never showed up in your actual life. And here is what makes this even more striking. Even among the things that did happen, how many were as terrible as you had pictured them? When you finally faced what you dreaded, did it destroy you? Or did you find somehow that you were able to handle it? When you look at your own history, a pattern emerges. The mind predicts disaster. Reality turns out differently. And yet the mind keeps predicting, keeps fearing, keeps spending your energy on futures that may never exist. Think about what this means. If most of your worries never become real, then most of the suffering you experienced from those worries was unnecessary. You were not suffering from life. You were suffering from your imagination of life. Your mind created entire worlds of pain, worlds that existed only between your ears. Now let us go deeper. Consider the cost of all this worry. How much of your life have you spent preparing for moments that never came? How many hours lost to rehearsing words you never needed to say, defending yourself against attacks that never arrived? The mind spends enormous energy on fear and very little on action. It prepares endlessly for battles that never happen and arrives exhausted when real challenges actually appear. Here is the weight you do not see. Not the weight of your actual problems. Those are real, and they deserve your attention. But the weight of all the imaginary problems, all the projected disasters, all the mental rehearsals for events that exist only as thoughts. This invisible weight is often heavier than anything life has actually placed on your shoulders. The strangest part, we rarely notice we are carrying it. We think the exhaustion comes from life itself. We think the tension is simply the price of being responsible. We do not realize that we have picked up burdens along the road that no one asked us to carry. So why does the mind do this? Why does it create suffering that does not need to exist? Why does it pull us into futures that may never arrive and trap us in pasts that cannot be changed? To understand this, we need to look at something psychology calls rumination. The word comes from how cows digest food. They chew, swallow, bring it back up, and chew again. The mind does the same thing with thoughts. It takes a painful memory or a frightening possibility and chews on it endlessly, over and over. The same thoughts, the same feelings, the same worn grooves in the mind. You think about a mistake you made. Then you think about it again and again. Each time, the same painful feelings arise. The shame, the regret, the wish that you had done something different. The event happened once. Through rumination, you experience it dozens of times. The same thing happens with the future. You worry about something that might go wrong. Then you worry again. And again. Each cycle of worry brings the same anxiety, the same tightness in your chest. The problem has not happened yet. It may never happen. But you have already suffered from it many times over. None of this is a flaw in who you are. The human brain evolved this way. For our ancestors, it was safer to imagine danger and be wrong than to miss danger and be dead. The mind that worried about predators behind every bush was more likely to survive. So we inherited brains that scan for threats, imagine worst-case scenarios, and replay problems over and over in search of solutions. But in modern life, this same mechanism often works against us. The threats we face today are rarely lions or hostile tribes. They are social anxieties, work pressures, relationship concerns, things that cannot be solved by running or fighting. And yet the mind treats them the same way. It circles around them endlessly, generating fear and stress, never quite resolving anything. The Buddha saw this very clearly over 2,500 years before modern psychology gave it a name. He and his disciples described a process they called papanka, the mind's tendency to proliferate, to expand, to turn something simple into something complicated. In the Madhupindika Sutta, the Venerable Mahakaccana explained this chain reaction, and the Buddha confirmed his explanation. Dependent on the I and forms, I consciousness arises. The meeting of the three is contact, with contact as condition, feeling. What one feels, one perceives. What one perceives, one thinks about. What one thinks about, one mentally proliferates. A simple event happens. The mind perceives. The mind starts thinking. Thinking expands and grows. A whole story is created. Let me give you an example. You send a message to a friend. An hour passes, then 2. No reply. That is all that has happened. A message not yet answered. But watch what the mind does. It begins to fill in the gaps. Are they upset with me? Did I say something wrong? Maybe they do not care about me anymore. Maybe I always end up being ignored. Maybe there is something wrong with me that pushes people away. From a single unanswered message, the mind has constructed an entire drama, complete with characters, motivations, and a tragic conclusion. You feel the emotions of this drama as if it were real. Your mood darkens. You carry this heaviness with you. Then your friend replies, "Sorry, I was driving." The drama dissolves. But for 2 hours, you lived inside a world of anxiety that never existed anywhere but in your own mind. The Buddha pointed to this when he taught in the Dhammapada. Mind goes first. Mind is chief. Things are mind-made. If one speaks or acts with a corrupted mind, suffering follows, like the wheel follows the ox's hoof. The world outside is real. Your responsibilities are real. The challenges you face are real. But the way you experience all of this, whether it feels crushing or manageable, depends enormously on what your mind does with it. The same situation can feel like a catastrophe to a turbulent mind and like a simple difficulty to a clear one. Now that we have seen how the mind creates stories, let us look more carefully at what this means for the weight you carry each day. Imagine you are walking a long road, carrying a backpack. Inside the backpack are your responsibilities, the things you genuinely need to attend to. Your work, your family, your health, the practical matters of daily life. This is the real weight. It exists. It is yours to carry. And carrying it is simply what it means to be alive, to have commitments, to care about things. But as you walk, something else happens. You start adding to the backpack. You pick up a stone called, "What if I fail?" and put it in. You pick up another called, "I'm not as good as everyone else." Then another. Something terrible is going to happen. One by one, you fill your backpack with stones that were never lying on the road ahead of you. They come from your own mind. By the end of the day, you are exhausted. You think it is because the road was too long. You do not realize that half the weight was stones you picked up yourself. Here is how to tell the difference. The real burden is the deadline that needs to be met. The added burden is the voice that says, I'll never finish, I'm worthless. The real burden is a child who needs guidance. The added burden is the thought, I'm a terrible parent and I'm ruining their life. The real burden is a relationship going through a hard time. The added burden is the certainty that they don't love me anymore and I'll be alone forever. Look at these two kinds of burden. The real burden asks something of you: action, attention, care. You can engage with it. You can work with it. Even when you do not know exactly what to do, you can take a step. The added burden asks nothing because it cannot be solved. You cannot fix the thought, I'm worthless, by working harder. You cannot resolve the fear, I'll be alone forever, by trying to control another person. These mental additions do not respond to action. They exist only in thought, and they dissolve only when you see them clearly. The Buddha was clear that suffering is part of human life. He did not teach a way to escape reality or pretend that everything is pleasant. In his very first teaching, he spoke directly. This is the noble truth of suffering. Birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. Sorrow, lamentation, pain, grief, and despair are suffering. Association with the unpleasant is suffering. Separation from the pleasant is suffering. Not getting what one wants is suffering. In brief, the 5 aggregates of clinging are suffering. Life includes difficulty. The Buddha looked at this directly. But notice something important in this teaching. He does not simply list external events. He includes sorrow, lamentation, grief, despair, the mental responses. And at the very end, he points to clinging as the root. We cannot always control what happens to us, but there is something about how we relate to what happens that makes the difference between necessary pain and unnecessary suffering. When the mind runs to the past to dwell on regret, it relives pain that has already ended. The event is gone. But through memory and rumination, you feel it sting again and again. When the mind races ahead to worry, it creates pain for events that have not arrived and may never arrive. You suffer now for something that does not yet exist. The Buddha spoke to this in the Bhattacharata Sutta. One should not chase after the past, nor place expectations on the future. What is past is left behind. The future has not yet come. Whoever sees clearly the present moment, right here, right now, that is the state to develop. You can learn from the past without living in regret. You can prepare for the future without being consumed by fear. The difference lies in whether you are using thought as a tool, or whether thought has taken over and is using you. When you see this distinction clearly, something begins to shift. You realize that a significant portion of what exhausts you, what tightens your shoulders and clouds your days, is not life itself. It is what your mind adds to life. And what the mind adds, the mind can also learn to set down. So how do we actually do this? How do we stop picking up extra stones? How do we set down what we have already gathered? Here we need to talk about mindfulness. But carefully, because this word has become popular and often misunderstood. Sometimes mindfulness is presented as passive observation. Just watch your thoughts. Let them come and go. Do not judge. Simply observe. If that were the whole picture, we might as well be stones in a field. A stone does not react to thoughts, but a stone also does not wake up. A stone does not transform. The Buddha taught something far more complete. In the Satipatthana Sutta, every instruction for mindfulness includes 3 qualities: ardent effort, clear knowing, and mindfulness itself. And all of this moves toward a purpose, removing what burdens the heart. One dwells contemplating the body in the body, ardent, clearly knowing, mindful, having removed covetousness and grief concerning the world. Ardent, meaning real effort, sustained engagement. Clearly knowing, meaning wisdom, understanding what you are seeing. Directed toward removing covetousness and grief, meaning this practice has a purpose, a direction, a result. What does this look like when a worried thought arises? First, you recognize it. Most of the time, we do not notice we are thinking. We are lost in the thought, carried by its current, believing its story completely. The moment you recognize a thought is here, that moment already breaks the spell. But recognition alone is not enough. You must also understand what you are seeing. Is this thought about something happening right now, or about a past that is gone, or a future not yet born? What does this thought want me to believe? If I follow it, where will it lead? The Buddha called this clear knowing. You see that a thought is impermanent. It arose just now, and it will pass. You see that clinging to it brings suffering. You see that it is not you in any essential sense. It feels like truth, but it is actually just weather, passing through. And then comes the active part. Once you see a thought clearly, you can choose. Follow it and let it grow into another elaborate story, or let it go. The Buddha gave detailed instructions for this in the Vitakkasanthana Sutta. 5 methods for working with unwholesome thoughts. Replace it with something wholesome. Turn your attention to the breath, the body, something that brings the mind to a better place. Examine the danger. See clearly that this thinking produces suffering, not peace. Withdraw attention. Stop feeding the thought. Turn away from it. Calm the underlying agitation. Settle the mental activity that gives rise to the thought. And when all else fails, firm resolution. Use determination to set the thought aside. A last resort, not a first response. This is how you work with the mind. You notice the fear arising. You see that most of what you are believing is projection, not fact. You recognize where this pattern leads. More tension, more exhaustion, less clarity. And seeing this, you make a choice. You return attention to what is actually here. The thought may arise again, and if it does, you repeat the process. Each time, the grip loosens. But I want to be honest. Knowing what to do is very different from doing it. You have a life to live. Work, family, 100 demands. You are not supposed to watch your mind all day. That expectation is unrealistic. What you can do is begin small. 1 moment of genuine presence in the middle of your ordinary day. 1 conscious breath when you notice tension building. 1 moment of recognition when anxiety appears. Even if you get carried away immediately after. That moment of seeing is already practice. The Buddha offered this image in the Dhammapada. Do not belittle merit, thinking it will not come to me. Drop by drop, the water pot is filled. Likewise, the wise one, gathering it little by little, fills oneself with good. Transformation happens this way, not in a single dramatic moment, but drop by drop, small seeing by small seeing. The pot fills slowly, but it fills. And what about the days when worry swallows you whole? Those days will come. They are part of the path. The path is not about never getting lost. It is about noticing, eventually, that you have been lost and finding your way back. Every return counts, even if you wander off again 5 minutes later. You have everything you need to begin. Not tomorrow. Now. 1 breath. 1 moment. 1 step on a path that has no final destination, only deepening freedom, drop by drop, for as long as you are willing to walk.